Now then, welcome back. So as we've been discussing, another afternoon where the FAI took centre stage at the Oireachtas Committee on Transport, Tourism and Sport. Attending, we had the Minister for Sport, Shane Ross, Minister of State, Brennan Griffin. We had Sport Ireland representatives, namely John Tracy and Kieran Mulvey. We will talk to the chair of the Oireachtas Committee in just a moment. First, here, a few clips to bring you. Shane Ross obviously was doing much of the talking, and he discussed the meeting on Monday evening with representatives from the FAI, confirmed they did request a bailout, not that that was new news as such, and over the course of this exchange as well, you will hear the voice of Jonathan O'Brien from Sinn Féin and, of course, as well, former Cork City chairman.
Minister Griffin and I met on Monday evening with members of the FAI board. A delegation led by the Vice President and Executive Lead, Paul Cook, along with their financial advisors from Grant Thornton. It was a sobering experience. As I've stated, the FAI delegation accepted the need for a full changeover of the board and for the urgent appointment of the independent chair and directors and for the appointment of an independent chief executive without undue delay. The FAI delegation presented the stark reality of the association's financial crisis and outlined their proposed business plan to overcome these very considerable challenges. They came seeking a bailout. Minister Griffin and I made it clear to the FAI that we cannot and will not provide them with taxpayers' money. The COSI report makes it clear that the association is not in a fit state to receive public funds, and we must respect that. We did, however, tell them that we would meet with UEFA to discuss the FAI's challenges.
There are many jobs within League of Ireland clubs as well, which could potentially be at risk if the FAI went under.
My guess is if the FAI goes, the League of Ireland goes the same way. Yeah, I think that's absolutely inevitable. But it's something which we would have on the agenda for our meeting with UEFA as well, because it would have implications for them too. We are going to obviously do some serious analysis of the consequences of examinership and liquidation, but that is what we want to avoid.
There we are. So somebody asked him to clarify just how much the FAI then were looking for on Monday.
They looked for 18 million as a possibility.
18 million.
18 million.
18 million.
18 million. That's what they looked for, or they looked for alternatively a guarantee of that, and they presented certain scenarios. But they actually they've named that figure. It was shocking.
And then just one last point before we hear from Fergus O'Dowd. Shane Ross did mention that the department has identified a way really to supply funding to the grassroots game directly by administering the salaries for regional development officers and coaches through a payroll services firm. And he said this mechanism was ready to roll out over the next month or so and could continue into 2020 if needed. He was, though, asked about any money going directly to the FAI.
I would like to confirm at the outset that not €1 of this funding will go to the FAI. Not a single cent will go to them, either directly or indirectly, until we are fully satisfied that all weaknesses in governance and financial control have been fully addressed.
There we are. So that was just some of what Shane Ross had to say this afternoon. We'll bring you more from the Oireachtas Committee later on in the football show. But in the meantime, we have the chair of the committee, Fergus O'Dowd, with us. Fergus, thanks for taking the call.
Thanks for having me on.
Sobering was the word Shane Ross used when he was asked for 18 million on Monday. This sounded to a lot of us like a company going into examinership and trying to explore all its options, frankly. This is very, 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 very serious right now.
It is very serious. And the other point is we don't actually know the extent of their debts because the auditor couldn't sign off on their accounts for the last year. So, like, it's a black hole in many respects. And clearly, the minister said, and I think it's exceptionally clear that they're not going to bail out the FAI. But the minister also said, and I think that it's a job of the UEFA, that they are already paying significant current funding to them. I think there's a figure, of around 10 million mentioned. So there is financial support from the international body, and that's obviously keeping them afloat. I think the point that the minister was making was that there is, if and when the culture changes, and clearly the new independent directors, the new independent chairperson, the new independent chief executive officer, who would have must have no previous history with the FAI. They will all be game changers in terms of a new atmosphere. That's what he spoke about, the new atmosphere. So as soon as that happens, whenever that happens, I think the blockage that is there might begin to unravel, and a way forward might be found.
The obvious worry is how long this blockage remains, because the COSI report is with Gardaí, and we know that the wheels of justice move slow. That's presuming things need to be addressed, but it's with Gardaí. The worry is this blockage continues, and what quality people are going to be attracted to this association right now?
Well, that's a very important question, and one of the reasons that the names haven't been announced is that they are, particularly whoever the new chairperson who's been identified, they have to do due diligence on all the financials, and they clearly, I believe, won't have access to the COSI report, but I think John Tracy said that they will have full access to all of the financial information that they can otherwise give them. It's a very difficult position if you're going in there and you don't know the full facts, and obviously you cannot have any liabilities attaching to yourself personally if you go in there. So it's a very difficult position for somebody to be in, and they will need all the support that they can possibly get. So, and they have to be a person who will provide new leadership. So the chairperson is a hugely important person, and to change that dynamic, they have to be really very special, truthfully. And I presume the government will be in a position then to find a new way forward. You mentioned there liquidation and examinership. Liquidation means all assets are gone, and as Deputy Jonathan Bryan pointed out, that would be absolutely catastrophic, not just for the FAI, but for the League of Ireland, and would have an impact on the national team as well. So that must be avoided. I'm not a financial person, but a examinership means that the company has a period of time within which to put forward a new modus operandi with the consent of the courts, and that would give them a breathing space, and it would mean that if the examiner formed the opinion that they can be a going concern, well, that may well be the way forward. But otherwise, I believe it's a black hole, literally, financially. Nobody knows, what's around the corner. I think the minister said that they get shocks every week from the FAI. So it's a very fraught position. But I think the positive thing to take out of it is that if we get the new directors on board, look for the new chief executive as quickly as possible. That's the only way the tune can change, and that people will be happy to fund it again. I think that the fact that big sponsors are out there, and they've no doubt there's a great advantage to sponsor, say, the national team, but they must have confidence in the association too. So it's absolutely, it's a shocking position to be in, but it's not without the possibility of rescue, I believe.
It was interesting at one stage, Catherine Murphy asked Brendan Griffin if it is a prerequisite to have a domestic league in order to have an international team. This was on the back of the potential of the League of Ireland going with the FAI. And he said he's not 100% sure. And really, look, it's not about targeting certain people now, but he should know. And he's a government minister for sport. It's kind of worrying that he doesn't know the answer to a question like that in the midst of a current crisis. I might understand if 2-3 years ago he was asked about that and he said, geez, I don't know actually, because there was no real need to know it. But there is a need to know the full situation now. He didn't know the answer to that question. The answer is you do need a league to have a team in the international sphere. So, potentially we're looking at a disaster on every front here. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, Shane Ross is sort of saying there, bailouts out of the question, and a government can't put money into this thing because of concerns various experts have on it. Will we get to a point where, if UEFA, as reports suggest, decide they do not want to bail out the FAI, will we get to a point where it's incumbent on the government, given the importance of the sport in the country, to go in as guarantor or to bail out the sport?
Well, I think that is the question, and obviously, clearly, there's hundreds of thousands of people up and down the country. They love the sport. Their children play it. Their brothers and sisters are on their teams. There's millions of supporters of Ireland internationally, and everybody wants the team to continue. I think that Minister Ross did say that UEFA believed that the FAI should consider selling their stake in the stadium. That question was asked today, but the asset hasn't been valued recently. But if that were a price, he did say that they're meeting with the IRFU, I think, tomorrow to talk about this issue. So, obviously, you're very right. It's a hugely damaging place for the FAI to be. I do think that the political system, and that's all of us, want the Irish team to continue. We want the league to continue. And I suppose the formula has to be that with the change that is expected with the new chairmanship, that's the only way forward. If the chairperson is happy to come in, and they may not come in, because obviously there's huge things for them to consider, and they have to be satisfied that they're fully aware and alert to all the issues. But it has happened in a different way. I know with the Olympic Council, when Sarah Keane came in from taking over from Mr. Hickey, there was a complete transformation of the financials of that association and the public perception, and the huge backing that Sarah did get. And I think that if we have the same sort of change here, with the right person going in there, that you could get a transformation. But it will take a leap of faith for the new independent chairperson to do that. So I think that it's but everything must be considered. But we cannot allow, and the minister has said this, we cannot allow the association to go into liquidation. So we have to find a formula. One of the problems is the meeting that's arranged. Just from my perspective, it's not arranged till the 14th of January. That's a long way away. And the minister is available to meet, as I understand it, right up to Christmas Eve. So there's a huge urgency there. And the reciprocal nature of that is obviously UEFA to meet them as quickly as possible. But that date, apparently the 14th, is agreed. The committee has also invited UEFA and whatever good that will do. But you're quite right. It's a huge crisis.
I mean, UEFA don't want to go near this. Really, I mean, UEFA are looking at this from afar, saying, "Well, look, this is your mess. You sort it out. We've given you 10 million in advance funds.
Yes,
and you've got, look to your government. Don't come near us." I mean, reports in the Sunday Times at the weekend were that UEFA were unwilling to go in as guarantors, and I would suspect they are going to be dragged kicking and screaming through this whole process. I don't think they'll be anywhere near you before January 14th. Is the honest answer. I think there is an element of you're on your own here. So when you talk about getting the right people in, what kind of timeline are we talking here? I mean, are we going to still be here in 6 months' time? Because the COSI report, for a start, I mean, that's just such a deterrent for anyone going in there right now.
It is, and if they can't be made aware of its contents, that's the other side of it, because the COSI report is with the Gardaí and the Director of Corporate Enforcement, and they're considering what action, if any, to take, including criminal action. So, it's a very thorough report. It was forensic. It was the committee that asked for that to be done, and that is, I know it's creating this other complication now, but the COSI report obviously says that FIFA is not capable, and not FIFA, but the FAI cannot be deemed trustworthy in the context of getting public funds. So the minister is saying the corporate, that has to change. But I wouldn't be without hope. I know it's easy for me to say that, but you said how long will it take? I think the point is it's taken far too long already. This has been going on for months, the selection of the actual individuals, and obviously they're making them aware of what the issues are. John Tracy did say that they're getting a full briefing from them. So look, it's a very difficult place to be. But I think that if they don't take it up, as I said today, this is a house of cards. It could collapse very quickly, because the minister is saying that until these people come in, there's not going to be a new atmosphere. The people haven't yet taken up the offer to get involved. That's where we're at right now. So I think public opinion will be very strongly in favour of, if examinership is a lesser of two evils, well, then that might be the way to go. I don't honestly know the answer to that. It may be that if the company can be restructured, that you might find a different atmosphere in UEFA, and in government circles if that were to happen. But I'm only speaking that personally without any...
Yeah.
I haven't discussed that with anybody, Joe. It's just what I think myself.
Yeah. It's kind of stunning what's going on here and how this thing's unravelling. I know Shane Ross has plans to fund 60 officers around the country, and that's welcome, I'm sure, especially for those 60 officers and the players that they coach. But you do need other staff around them, admin staff and their support network in the FAI. So in some respects you wonder what happens if they're left in a vacuum. But it's a plan nonetheless. Did it come up today, Fergus? We have Shane Ross sitting there, who has certainly been to the fore over the last number of months and is more than happy to talk to everybody about how terrible things are. But literally in November of last year, 4 or 5 months before Mark Tighe's piece first appeared in the Sunday Times, was on this station saying all he heard were great things about John Delaney, great grassroots support, doing a fantastic job as far as he could see. And we have Sport Ireland saying, well, they're not a regulatory body, they can only look after the money or check the money that they've given to the association. There is a sense amongst people, and I would share it really in truth, that things need to change in terms of how an organisation like the FAI is being monitored, will be monitored, and certainly has been monitored by the government. Because you take Ross's comments, you take Sport Ireland effectively saying there's not much more we can do, and government, to some extent or otherwise, clearly not the main culprits, but asleep at the wheel and allowing this situation to fester. And it did fester for quite some time, and we're going to have to look at how we manage associations like the FAI going forward in a big way.
Absolutely, and I mean there are other sporting organisations in the past where there were issues around finances, and there are issues, I think, in some of our sporting organisations today, other than the FAI, about funding and legal cases being taken and money being, you know what I'm talking about there. So I think it's Galway, there are issues over there. So really what you're saying is there is no regulator for sport, and that is true. Sport Ireland is not a regulatory body, and it has no investigative or enforcement powers. So it basically relies on the goodwill of the associations and their good name to believe that all is well within them. And the audits that are done, or the money that is paid to organisations like the FAI, is done on the basis of certified accounts. Yeah. And it is absolutely unbelievable that that what was going on in the FAI has only been addressed following a forensic audit as opposed to the standard audit that was done. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, we do need significant change in it. And the question is, Sport Ireland don't have the power to audit or inspect the books of any of the sporting bodies without the say-so of that body. I think we need to look at how we could have better regulation and more accountability without encumbering those organisations with red tape that means they can't go or do anything without the say-so of the auditors. But you are right. There is a huge demand now for more accountability and more. I think Sport Ireland, or it may be the charity regulator, I think setting up a new body wouldn't go down with people. But I do think that there is a need for significant powers to either the charity regulator or to Sport Ireland to, that they can, muscle in on bodies if they're not doing their job, and can do, that they can go in there and must go in there regularly, to make sure things are okay.
Well, even yesterday, Catherine Murphy in Leaders' Questions made the point that there should be some obligated audit rotation, as in Deloitte have done FAI accounts for 23 years. And again, just human nature is what we're guarding against here, and relationships develop over 23 years. One other thing, the FAI not turning up today. Yeah. They're very busy, quite understandably, and I mean, they seem to be, unfortunately, in a very real way with Grant Thornton looking at options for examinership and, let's hope not, liquidation. So they are busy, but in a show of faith, in an effort to say, well, this is a new era and we're going to cooperate in every possible way, they should have been there today.
Of course they should have been there today.
Ridiculous.
And we made it very clear publicly to them that if they were there, that we wouldn't, and we didn't. And I made sure that we didn't go into the COSI audit and anything that was germane to that at all. And that was an absolute guarantee to them. And we made sure, and it was obvious to everybody, that we stood that line today.
But sorry
they should have been there. It would have been hugely important. But I suppose unless and until they can show, that the leopard has changed his spots, and I think it's only like members want to speak to or want to question Mr. Conway. That is a hugely important issue for a number of us. But it's only until that he has retired that we'll get to change, really, because until he goes, it's still the same. I know, and he's committed to going, and I'm not saying he isn't or that he's trying to hang on. But the point is, he is still there, and until you have that sea change, there won't be a new face to look at. So the narrative will only change. It's like in a political party until the old regime is gone and the new leadership comes in, and that can only be through the independent chairperson. And obviously they have to select a new president, but the new president of the FAI won't have the same powers as Mr. Conway. It will not be the chairman of the board, which is the present position, and the new the new CEO, whoever they will not be running the board. They won't be members of the board. They'll be accountable to the board. So there are very important structural changes coming in there. But unless and until we get some new faces there, it's not going to happen. But we do want to talk to Mr. Conway, and we do want to talk to him about issues which are germane to his presidency of that organisation. But I think we want to concentrate on the future as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, on Rhea Walsh's letter, I mean, she didn't really. The COSI report was not the overwhelming reason that they didn't show up today. It was just, frankly, and I'm surmising here, it was just we're busy. I mean, let's say any more than that. I mean, we're busy. We got a lot going on here. We can't turn up in front of the People's Committee. So that was just wholly unacceptable. I have two last very quick questions. Will we ever see John Delaney before an Oireachtas committee?
I don't think you'll ever see John Delaney in the sport. Certainly, I think until the COSI issue is dealt with, that's the only opportunity Mr. Delaney might have to come into us. I don't think you'll ever see him again in soccer. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I mean, you might extend an invitation.
I think that the organisation, is in such a difficult place, and he was the chief executive of it, that I don't think people would have him in that organisation in that capacity ever again. And he won't be the next chief executive, that's for sure.
No, clearly. But I wonder, with the COSI report dealt with, when it is dealt with, might you extend the invitation to him?
And we'll ask them to account for their stewardship. But it's like that is the past now. John Delaney is the past. He's history, and the old FAI is history. But we don't want it to go into oblivion, which is what it's facing now. Like, there are 200 people have their jobs in the FAI, and I understand, I heard on a different programme today that there might be. I heard a figure of 400 employed in the League of Ireland. I don't know if they're permanent jobs. So it seems it seems that like the whole. It's hugely damaging what has happened, and it's hugely traumatic for all of those people who are working there. So I think what we need to make sure is that the new leadership is entirely different, is much more accountable, and as you point out, there needs to be properly regulated, and needs to be totally different in every way to what is presently there.
Well, maybe think about extending the invitation to Mr. Delaney all the same, because his performance the last day he appeared wasn't so forthcoming.
It wasn't. The problem was that,
he cited legal issues, but I mean, come on.
I don't disagree with you. We'd love to have him in, but it won't happen this stall anyway, obviously.
No. Well, look, if the general election goes your way, keep sending him invitations when all this dies down.
We would, of course, no problem with that at all.
One last point then. Can you give us, without being, and I didn't want to have a sensationalist conversation here, and hopefully we haven't, but things are very grave, and the meeting on Monday was very, very grave and very worrying, and words like liquidation and examinership are now being used by everybody. How urgent is this? You said the 14th of January was when UEFA might come in for a meeting. Like, I mean, does something need to be resolved? Are we talking a matter of days here before something goes awry?
Well, the way it is, I'm not, again, I want to stress, I'm talking just off the top of my head, literally. But I do know that if you're owed money by an organisation, and if you hear that these are the issues that they're looking for a bailout and so on, like, I mean, creditors can insist on getting their money, and if they do that, they could put that organisation into a very serious position straight away by making an application through the court. So I think what's hugely important that we move very quickly, and my view, it's just my personal view, that the 14th of January is too far away for the meeting with UEFA, and I think they should be meeting now. Because we're as you say, it's very grave. It's a very serious crisis. There's hundreds of jobs at risk. There's the future of the Irish soccer team. All of our, it's just in a very difficult place. But like from our perspective as a committee, we're ready to meet anybody at any stage. And obviously, we agreed today, as you know, to invite in UEFA. We've agreed to invite in lots of other parties as well. Like there's huge goodwill out there to soccer, and we just can't let it fail now. It is unconscionable that it would happen. Unconscionable that it can't be allowed to happen. And obviously we'll keep whatever pressure we can on the government and on the ministers. And obviously Sport Ireland, like John Tracy, obviously clearly there are weaknesses structurally in his organisation, and we need to be able to beef it up and to make sure that
I think, just to round off because the clock's against me. Sorry to interrupt.
Of course, yeah. No problem,
I think we're at a point, very finally, where goodwill might just have to be acting the role of guarantor or a bailout. I mean, that is what.
Yeah, well, I think
is
it's
where
much
we are with
easier
this
to be a guarantor than to be the bailout man. But I think just reading what the minister actually said, and he actually said that if there's a new, if there's a fundamental change in the organisation, that will be significant and it will change. It's how can I put it to you? It's like there's a new, if the Leopard is seen to have changed his spots and none of the old team are involved, and depending on who the people are who are being nominated, who have been offered the position of new directors, that could be totally transformational, as it was in the Olympic Council. And there's lots of people out there with huge experience that want to come in, are happy to come in, or happy to lend a hand. And it's like in this crisis, we need everybody that we can on board with it. Okay,
Fergus O'Dowd, appreciate the time. Busy day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.